Hi there. Just played this really interesting hand, and I feel quite confident about the reads that I made. So I'm just gonna go ahead and share it here on the replayer. So over here, I am in the MP. So this is me, xavierfok, and I raised with ace queen offsuit, and I got called by CCF20. So you can see stats over here. 21, 15, 5.7, and it goes full all around. Okay, and then flop comes 10, 5, 4. So okay, what's his calling range here? Let's just take a look. So let's go step by step. His calling range here, you can see from MP is about 8%, and 16% in the CO, and 13% in the button. So that's his call open setting, as you can see right here. So this 8, 16, and 13. So it gives you an idea of what he's calling here is about somewhere around 10%. So what is 10% of hands? Which so I'm going to just open up the AQo lab, and you can see that over here. Yep. So 10% of hands, if you just drag to 10%, you can see roughly what he's calling, and you know that he's usually not calling this aces and kings and queens. Ace kings probably not also. So it gives you an idea of what he's calling. So mostly there will be a lot of pocket pairs. As you can see that he's pretty consistent in his calling. So I expected a lot of pocket pairs and some broadways, maybe even some suited connectors. So you can see that it's somewhere around 10% of hands. Yep. Okay. So when this board lands 10, 5, 4, so just go ahead and key in the flop 10, 5, 4. So 10, 5, 4. Okay, so my hand is an ace queen offsuit. Okay, so you can see that I'm actually not doing very well here, but this board is actually relatively dry, 10, 5, 4, and he is also not his folding is actually pretty balanced. I'm not sure if you can see his stats. It's out of the screen, but yeah, anyway, he's folding around 40 over percent to C bets. So C betting here is profitable, and even if he doesn't fold his pocket pairs, which is we're talking about 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s. Okay, so he most likely will fold it on a later street, because let's say he has 6s, 7s, 8s, and 9s. There's still a good chance that a jack, queen, king, ace would come. So I'm just gonna write down the cards that could come that helps us against middle pocket pair. So it'll be jack, queen, ace. So just these three. And how many cards are there? There's three queens. So we have 3 queens, and we have 3 aces that can help us, and we have 3 kings. No, 4 kings actually. 4 kings and also 4 jacks, right? So that's a total of, how many is that? 6 plus 4, 10, 14. So there's a total of 14 favorable cards over 2 streets. So assume here that he actually has some weak hand. So we're talking about a middle pair, maybe a 5, 6 suited that calls, will end up checking, right? So which is actually a majority part of his range. And if it's a set, he will raise it, or he will, anyway, we are not betting the turn unless we hit something that helps us. So 14 favorable cards over 2 streets, so that will actually be a good chance, because 14 favorable cards, we have 5 out already. There are 52 cards on the deck. So 52 minus 5 is 47. So we have 47 cards. So 14 favorable cards out of 47 over 2 streets. So every street, right, there is a chance that 14 divided by 47 is about 29.8%. So 29.8% of the time, turn is going to be favorable for us. Okay, and if you add it together, which is just times 2, we have a 59.8% chance that by river we get a favorable card that we can barrel off a middle pocket pair, which is usually what he's calling here. And if he folds, that's even better. So let's take a look at what he did. So we fire off a C bet. Sizing, Sizing wise, if I could choose again, I'll actually make it a little bit smaller, something like $2, because this board is actually very dry. So anything that is calling here, anything that's calling a $2.22 bet would also call a $2 bet, and we'll also call a $2.50 bet, because what hands will call here? 5x, second pair, middle pair, sets, or raise lah, continue, or 10x. All of them would they are price insensitive, so I would prefer my sizing here to be about $2. Yep. So, and most of the random crap would fold. So okay, and he calls. So a 9 comes. So what did the 9 really do? Okay, for pocket pairs, 6 and 7s and 8s, of course, his range is actually weaker. And if he has a hand like 10, okay, he's going to bet here. And 9 is actually not very favorable for me, because I've already decided beforehand that these are the hands that I will continue on, which is 30% of the time, which is fair enough for me to actually fire on the flop, because I need to be able to continue turn on a fair amount of time. So, which is 30% and 60% by river. So this is a reasonable number for me to actually just continue. So what happened here is that I really don't know what he has, because if he has something, if he has a set, if he has a good pair, he's betting here. If he has a bluff, like a king queen that floated, he's probably betting here also. And if he has a ace king, maybe he will check back, but ace king will probably 3-bet pre-flop. So what happens is that I decided to check to him, and if he bets here, I'm actually giving up. Even though there are some king queen in his range, but the thing is that I don't think king queen is so often in his range and floating so often. And let's say he has like a 8-9, let's say he has like a 9 jack or something going for a backdoor straight and backdoor flush draw, and he hits the 9, he's also not betting here. He's most likely checking back here. You can see that his c bet is only 50%. So the top 50% of hands that bet, actually he's not going to be the top 50%. He's probably going to bet like the top maybe 20% of his range, and on the bottom 30% of his range. So the middle pairs will usually check back on the turn. So as you see that after I check, he checks back. So the moment he checks back here, I'm actually pretty sure that he doesn't have a 10, neither does he have a set, right? So what else does he have back? Okay, so he could have floated with a hand like king queen or king jack, right? So, but there's not a lot of his range, because we can see that his calling range is actually pretty tight, somewhere around 10%. So majority of his range is going to be middle pocket pairs, okay? Or even, so what do I mean by middle pocket pairs? I mean 6 6 7 7 8 8, yeah, just these 3, or maybe even 3 3 and 2 2, because sometimes it makes sense for him to just call one street. Yeah, according, yeah, he might believe lah, because that he has some kind of showdown and he might call. But usually we are talking about 6 6 7 8 8 here. And if he actually has 9 9 or 10 10, which is all sets, he will definitely be betting the turn. Doesn't make sense for him to check back. And the moment he checks here, I'm actually pretty sure that he has a pocket pair. Yeah, because king queen, if he decides to float king queen, he's probably going to bet here, because this card actually improves his range. So the fact that he checks tells me that he has exactly 6 6 7 7 or 8 8. So I decided to fire up a bet. Okay, and now is the bet sizing. How much does it? So the turn comes 7, and it's kind of irrelevant. I mean, of course 7 hits his range, but more likely it doesn't, because you see we are looking at, okay, 3 3 and 2 2. I'm just gonna take out one combination, because I don't think he's gonna call so often. So out of these 4 combinations, the 7 only helps one combination, and the fact that he has a 7, meaning that he has 2 7s, and then one more 7 come, is very low. So let me just do the calculations over here. So I will just, for the sake of this calculation, I'm just going to assume that we have 3 pairs. Okay, so I will assume he has 7 7, correct? So if he has 7 7, the chance of 7 helping him is, if let's say any 6 6 7 7 or 8 8 comes, right, it's actually only, how many 7s are left? There are only 2 cards, so 2 7s left, correct? But there are how many? 8 6 and 8s left. So the chance of this actually helping him, right, is actually only 20%. So even if this is a 6, it's the same. The chance that the 6 or the 7 or the 8 helped improve his range is only 20%, which means that there is a 80% chance that the 7 did not help him, which means that a bet fired here gets folds 80% of the time, right? And I can tell you, as in, we are confident that our bet here is probably going to, we are probably going to lose here very often. So if you're able to get him to fold any more than 70% of the time, it's already a very good bet. Yeah, so the next thing to decide here is the sizing issue. So how much do you need to fire in order to get, so we are now only talking about two hands, sixes and eights, which is actually a very narrow range, and maybe threes, maybe twos, but that's very unlikely. So how much do you need to fire for pocket sixes or pocket eights to fold? So take note that even if you have pocket eights, which is the strongest hand here, you are looking at third pair, right? So, and he actually checked back very fast. So what happens is that I think he's ready to fold, although his went to showdown is actually a little bit high. His checks was a little bit too fast, so I decided to fire a small bet. I fired 650. On hindsight, I would prefer a sizing somewhere around 570, maybe $6. I don't think you need to be so big because you are just folding out a third pair. So in order to convince a third pair to fold, anything slightly more than half pot is probably enough. But I don't think this is a big mistake, firing 650 instead of the $6 that I would have fired instead, because of course sometimes he can convince himself to call 8s here, but when the bet is a little bit bigger, of course the fold equity is also more lah. So well, that sums up the analysis for these hands. Thank you for watching. Xavier Fok here.